Welcome back to the STLK in the UTA Cougars podcast. I'm Paul, joined by Steve. The BYU Cougars have lost a couple games, have won a couple games, but for the most part, they've won a couple games.
They've won a couple games, and it's a fun team to watch.
Yeah.
Like the style of play that we have, it's fun. And the coaches picked us second to last coming into the year in the Big 12. And so I feel like we're just playing with house money. Like any win we get in the Big 12, it's like, wow, this is fun.
Well, it is house money unless you have really high expectations like the Final Four. And then it's like every win's like, oh, this isn't
Every
enough.
game counts.
It does. Iowa State, we played them 6 days ago. Cougars took that game 87-72 in a game that felt like we kind of had control all game.
Yeah, it was a fun game. We went without Trevin and Foose, which was interesting.
It was.
We've been missing Foose for a while. He came and played, and then I guess he had a setback. So we didn't have Trevin either. I think he hurt his foot.
Yep.
Coming down on somebody maybe. I believe he's right now the number 2 3-point shooter in the nation. Is Trevin L.
I believe so.
Going into that game, here comes Iowa State, the best defensive team in the nation. Mm-hmm. They're number one in the nation, forcing turnovers. Their games are just ugly usually, low scoring, ugly games. They had just beat Houston, who's number 3 in the country. Mm-hmm. And so coming in and hearing, okay, Foose and Trevin not going to play, it's like, I don't know.
Kind of need those guys.
Yeah, those are guys that are important to our team. But it was really interesting how the game started. I want to talk about this. Was a lot of the times you get to the under 16 timeout, right? You start the game 20 minutes in the half. You play the first whistle under 60 minutes is the first TV media timeout, right? Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of times you get to this, it's like 5-3, 6-4, 2-5, right? It's some like low scoring.
Yeah.
And that's what I expected going into this game just because of the style of play Iowa State has. It reminds me back to like St. Mary's in the West Coast Conference where they really slow everything down. They play very slow. They milk the clock and then they just grind you on defense and it's hard to find good shots. Mm-hmm. But at the under 16 timeout, it was 13-12.
Yeah.
So 25 points scored in like 4 minutes. I was really surprised to see that. And BYU played well pretty much the rest of the game after that.
Granted, that under 16 timeout did come with 14 minutes left on the clock.
Sure.
So it was a little milked, which is interesting because there was a couple, I guess there wasn't a dead ball. There was a turnover. But again, to your point, 25 points in 6 minutes. I didn't see that coming either. Spencer Johnson.
Had himself a game.
AP Player of the Year candidate. Not actually, but I'd love to see it. He had 28, 9, and 5. Just filled up the stat sheet. A young 27-year-old Spencer, just killing it.
The oldest player in college basketball. He's had a rough go. But previous to this game, he had not been playing well. It's been a while since it seemed like he had a breakout game. And so it was good to see Spencer get back on track. In his career, he's a 40% three-point shooter. Mm-hmm. This year, he'd been hovering in the mid to high 20s. And so, it was good to see him get back on track. Past weekend against Texas Tech didn't play as well. But man, career high for Spencer. Shout out to him, a guy that's stuck around and done it the right way and really believed in Coach Pope when a lot of other guys were bailing on the program. And credit to him, had a great game.
Yeah, to your point of the Iowa State just grinding out games, I did not see us scoring 87 points against them. That's really impressive.
Yeah, the best defensive team in the country. They average turning over their opponent 19 times per game. So on average, their opponents have 19 turnovers. We only had 10. We had half of that. On average, they get 11 steals per game. They only got 4 steals against us. So I think we did a really good job of protecting the ball, of making smart passes. One of the things I noticed was BYU really likes to run this motion offense, and they always throw it to their 5, the center at the top of the key, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times in these games, whether it's Ali Khalifa, whether it's Foose, a lot of the time it's Atiki Ali Atiki, they're catching the ball with their foot on the 3-point line or inside the 3-point line. Against Iowa State, they're typically catching the ball 4, 5, 6 feet away from the arc. So Iowa State was really pushing us out, keeping us away from the basket as we're running our motion offense. But I thought we didn't get frazzled. I think that was a good game to have at home with how high intensity it was on the defensive end, but we didn't get frazzled. We had a lot of backdoor cuts.
A lot of them.
And when we're shooting the 3 as well as we are, it makes the backdoor really open up because guys are running through screens and running outside a lot of those same sets that you see they run for Steph Curry. And the defenses have to respect that because of how well we shoot the 3. And so you give them one and then go in the back door, and we saw a lot of those good passes as well against Iowa State.
Speaking of games you'd want to play at home, Texas Tech, that crowd willed them to the win. It felt like every shot. If you're ready to move on to Texas Tech, it felt like every single Pop Isaacs, I believe is his name. Every 3 counted for 6 points. It felt like that crowd was electric. Had that game been in Provo, I feel like we win it.
Yeah, I think so. We have a great home court advantage. Yeah. We should see it tomorrow against number 3 Houston. I know the Texas game this weekend is already sold out. Mm-hmm. There's still some tickets available for tomorrow at Houston. We have a great home court advantage. I'm glad we got Iowa State at home. I did just want to mention that every halftime they do this Qualtrics shot. Have you seen this?
Yeah, I have.
And so it goes up by $1,000 every game. Uh-huh. And so it was up to $10,000. The kids shot it, and most of the time, I don't know who they're picking from. I don't know their pool of like half court candidates, but a lot of times like you can tell, like he makes one dribble, like, okay, this is a miss, right? This kid, like he's out there dribbling the ball, you're like, okay, this kid has a chance. Yeah. He shoots the first one, it hits the backboard and then off the rim and misses. And it's like, wow, that was pretty close. And then they threw a curveball. They said, we're going to give you another shot at it. I don't know if Ryan Smith's like sitting on the sideline. He's like, like you're at the auction, he's like, put up your numbers, like gives him the head nod or whatever. Anyway, the kid drained it. He had a bank at halftime. And so everybody was hyped up. And in the second half, we just rolled. One more thing I will mention that was interesting. We only played 7 guys against Iowa State, which is a lot different. Most of the games this year we were playing 10, 11 guys. We had quite the big rotation. With Foose and Trevin out, we really tightened that rotation down. And so it was interesting to see that, but the guys played well. But Texas Tech, fun environment for the guys to play in. From what I saw, I heard they have a great 15,000 seat venue where their fans were absolutely raucous.
Undefeated at home so far, Texas Tech is. They
haven't lost since March of last year.
Which is crazy because I remember we were up, I think 5 or 6 and they said that stat. And I was like, man, that would suck to go to that game and be like the one game you went to and they lost. They didn't lose. They came back and they won that game. Pop Isaacs and Richie Saunders, I'm sure you heard this on the broadcast, teammates at Wasatch Academy in Utah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Pop Isaacs went to Wasatch Academy.
He did. I think he went for a year and then transferred. Okay. But he was teammates with Richie down there. I don't want to touch on that game too much because it hurt. The second half hurt. It hurt. Because we were up, 18 going into halftime, something like that.
I think it was 16, yeah.
Something where I was like, do I turn this on? Do I go back to the Ravens game? Like, I'm not sure what to watch right now. Jazz were playing at the same time. And to watch BYU fall in the second half like that, it was indicative of how a lot of second halves have gone this year for us.
Well, we've led every Big 12 game at halftime. Yeah. And our record's 2-3 overall. And so I don't know whether it's coaching, whether it's focus, whether it's just, kind of the luck of the draw with shooting. We take so many threes and maybe in the first half we're hotter than in the second half. Other teams making adjustments, whatever it is, we have to figure it out. We were outscored 53-30 in the second half. At halftime, we had a 94.9% win percentage. And so, 19 times out of 20, ESPN says you win that game, and we were the 1 out of 20 that blew it. We had a couple guys that had really tough games. Like you said, Pop killed us. I have him down for 58% shooting, 4 for 4 from the line, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, 32 points overall.
Career high, I believe, right?
Yeah, he just popped off. Absolutely had a massive game. Texas Tech has been down a couple times this year. I didn't know this until after the game, but they have, I believe, 3 comeback wins of double digits in the Big 12 after 5 games. And so a lot of respect to those guys for sticking with it, for their crowd, keeping them in the game like we talked about. That was a good venue, a good environment, and man, what a comeback for them.
Texas Tech is the very top of the Big 12 standings right now.
4-1, right?
I know you wanted to touch on that because that's really impressive. They're the best team in the Big 12. Kansas State also at 4-1. Then Houston's already dropped 2 games.
Interesting, yeah. And Houston comes to Provo tomorrow night. Maybe we can give them another loss, put them to 500. That'd be pretty fun. It hurts. We talked about this game hurting. One of the reasons it hurts is because we could have woke up this morning and been number 1 in the Big 12. Like, how cool would that be? After 5 games, we're tied for first in the Big 12. We also dropped in the AP poll today. I think we win that game. That's 2 games, 2 top 25 wins in the week. I think we jumped 4 or 5 spots. Texas Tech, interestingly, jumped 5 spots.
Yeah,
they split their games as well. They lost on the road and then barely beat us at home.
Who'd they lose to again?
Texas, I think it was.
Let me look. It was Houston. 54-77 right? By Houston.
Yeah, so they got beat by more than 20, and then they barely squeeze out a win against us when we outplayed them for 30 minutes of the game, and they jumped 5 spots, and then we beat number 24 Iowa State handedly and barely lose on the road, and we get dropped 1. So
that was interesting. I'm shocked we dropped 1. I don't know if you're going to bump Texas Tech up that much. I'm shocked that we drop, if that makes sense. And I think because we could have won that game.
And it's recency bias, right? I think the Saturday games matter more. You play 2 games and then 1 poll comes out. And so I think the people forget about the Tuesday games. I'm sure they have it on their card, right? Okay, BYU this score.
But they don't remember how they played.
Right. And they're probably not watching a lot of the games anyway. And so that was a little bit disappointing to see. But 9 weeks in a row, we've been ranked in the AP poll. So that's pretty fun.
That's got to be a record, at least in the last handful of years.
It's been a while since we've been that good. Yeah.
Something I want to touch on, excuse me if I get long-winded here, but I was really excited to see this. So the Big 12 had 6 teams go to the tournament last year. 7, excuse me. Texas had the automatic bid. They won the tournament. Baylor, West Virginia, Kansas State, Iowa State, Kansas, TCU. These are the records of West Virginia. They went 7-11 in conference play last year.
Wow.
And went to the tournament. Iowa State, 500. They went 9-9. TCU, also 9-9. As far as how did they make it in? I have that answer for you. Or at least I don't know how they'd made it in, but this is important. Who's this? Kansas, I believe. No, this is West Virginia. From December 22nd, they beat Stony Brook. They won 1 more game until January 25th last year.
So in 34 days, they won one game.
Yep, and that was against TCU, which is like, that's how do you make the tournament? I don't know. You're in a really good conference.
So they probably started conference play 1-4, 1-5, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. The next one, Iowa State. They beat, here we go. Same thing. They beat TCU on February 15th. Their next win they get is on March 4th against Baylor. Granted, both of those games are against top 10 teams they win, but to the point of BYU might lose tomorrow and they might lose again on Saturday. Is that the Texas game Saturday?
Yes.
That's okay. Like last year it showed, like if you're in the Big 12, you can lose a handful of games and still make it in the tournament. With that being said, BYU probably needs to go 500 to get into the tournament. I'm not sure how West Virginia made it in last year at 7-11. I'll be honest. Like I was looking at all of it. They didn't make a Big 12 tournament run. They didn't do much. They did make it in. Out of BYU's remaining games, I want you to tell me where I'm wrong because this is a little biased because I'm a huge Cougs fan. Home against Houston, I have it as a loss.
It's the only game that Ken Pom is projecting at home as a loss for BYU.
Right. And you're going to hear in these predictions like that kind of reflects that. So we lose tomorrow against Houston. We win against Texas.
That would be fun.
That would be fun, right? Split those games. At West Virginia, I have it as a win. Kansas just lost.
I watched the first half of that game. I was surprised to see how raucous the crowd was. I mean, yes, it's Kansas coming in, but West Virginia has not had a good season. Mm-mm. Like they're probably going to end up being the worst or the second worst team in the Big 12. And their fans were into it and they were hitting everything. And then they scored like 90 something points.
It wasn't a super close game, was it? Do I remember that right?
Like
yeah.
They just played really well against Kansas and all that to say, like, you can't sleep on any Big 12 team.
No, you can't.
So a win in West Virginia, I would love to see it. We'll see what happens.
That's what I'm saying. So that one I feel like is a coin flip.
Morgantown all the way out there. That's a long way to go.
We saw what the football team looked like out there. It wasn't pretty. At Oklahoma right after, I have that as a loss. Home against Kansas State, I have it as a win. We're at home. I think that's going to be a win. Home against UCF, I think we handle them as well. Oklahoma State, that one I'm not sure about. I'm going to mark it as a win.
Is that home or away?
That's at Oklahoma State in Stillwater.
Yeah, they are currently the worst team in the Big 12 in ranking standings as well as Ken Pom. But man, you go on the road in the Big 12, you just don't know.
You don't know. These teams, you don't know who's showing up.
I think the best case scenario for BYU is Oklahoma State keeps dropping games. Their fans check out.
Yep.
They go there. We have 4,000 BYU fans and 4,000 Oklahoma State fans, and the team gets excited and plays well. That's probably best case.
That's best case. And then we are at home that weekend against Baylor. I have that as a win as well. I think we easily could have beat Baylor in Waco.
I think, given what we saw at Baylor, I think that's a safe bet.
Okay. At Kansas State, have it as a loss. At Kansas, have it as a loss. Back-to-back losses. Home against TCU, I think we win. At Iowa State, I think we lose.
Agreed.
Which I feel like is pretty fair. Home against Oklahoma State, I think we win that one as well. To your point, I think they just kind of check out. That would finish us at 8-8 Big 12. Which I think is good enough to get into the tournament, regardless of how the Big 12 tournament goes. Is that crazy?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's crazy. Ken Pom said before conference play started that if BYU goes 500 in the Big 12, they will be in. That's what he said.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair. Before the season, anybody would have taken BYU at 8-8. Like we would have been thrilled to have that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, our expectations have increased. Right now, I think it'd be slightly disappointed with 8-8. Something like 9-7 would be really awesome.
Yeah.
But I think your picks are pretty fair there.
Last year, there was 3 teams in the Big 12 that finished at 500 or below it that made the tournament.
Yeah, there you go.
I think BYU with all the not preseason hype, but the pre-conference hype and how they're losing these games, which are close. They're playing really good teams. I think 500 gets us there. And I even think 7-9 probably gets us there, especially if we win a game in the tournament.
I do think we have a big advantage that BYU has been talked about all through the non-conference slate, right? We've been ranked in the top 5 net. We've been ranked in the top 5 Ken Pom. And so even if we do start to slide near the end of the year, I still think you got to win a game in the Big 12 tournament.
Yeah.
But if we finish 500 and can win a game in the tournament, given how good BYU was this year, how many things we rank high in, whether it's Ken Pom or net or adjusted averages or, a lot of these different analytics, I do think BYU would be in, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't been like this for years.
No. If we go 7-9 in the WCC, man, we're done. Like,
we're not getting NIT. We're not getting nothing.
Yeah. Houston tomorrow. I think personally, they've been one of the best teams the last 5 or 6 years.
Yes, they've been consistently good. They have a great program. Welcome to the Big 12 to them. They're at the top. They were at the top of the conference. Like you said, they've already dropped 2 games, which is quite interesting. A really ugly game against UCF. I think They held UCF to like 2 or 3 2-point field goals or something just ridiculous. But a very high quality team, number 3 in the nation, coming to Provo. Man, I wish we could have beat Texas Tech so that we had a little more momentum and hype. Yeah. Had we beat Texas Tech Saturday, I think the game sells out. Now I think we're going to have, 1,000 or 2,000 tickets that don't get gobbled up. Like we've talked about, they're pretty expensive. A lot of families, on a Tuesday night, it's a school night. They don't want to pay $140 to go to a game with one kid, right?
No kidding.
But either way, I think it's going to be an awesome environment. Hopefully the Rock shows out and is all the way to the rafters. Hopefully we start hot and keep the crowd in it. One of the things I really think that the team has got to be better at, and Mark Pope talked about this on Tuesday night after the game. Tuesday was an anomaly in Big 12 play. Iowa State had 25 free throws and we had 24 free throws. Every other game there's a massive chasm between the other team's free throws and ours. So in Big 12 play, I wrote this down. BYU has had 67 free throws and opponents have had 128. Jeez. That's basically 2 to 1.
Yeah.
They're doubling us up on free throws. Like I said, Iowa State had 25 and us 24. Against Texas Tech, I haven't seen a lot of people talking about this, but this was a massive difference in the game. Texas Tech had 18 free throws and made 17 of them. That's good for 94%. That's an unbelievable free throw percentage. We had 5 free throws.
Made 3 of them?
We made 3.
Yeah.
So they scored 17 points from the line. We scored 3 points from the line. That's a massive chasm. We have to be better at a couple things. Number 1, we have to be better at guarding without fouling. Mark Pope talked about this after the Iowa State game. I think the team has improved, but we still have to be better on the defensive end. The other thing we have to get better at, we take a lot of threes.
A ton.
You don't usually draw a lot of fouls when you're shooting that many threes. They're jump shots. We got to do a better job of when we're not taking threes, drawing contact at the basket. 5 free throws in a game is not going to win you many games. We have to get to the paint. We have to give the refs a reason to call fouls. And right now we're just not doing that.
Dallin Hall attacks the basket so well. Dallin Hall also refuses to shoot layups.
Wasn't that weird against Texas Tech? He had the angle multiple times with his right hand, his strong hand.
He either dribbled it out, 2
or 3 times he dribbled it out, or he'd run under the basket and try to pass like a pocket pass.
Yeah, I'm like, you're not Steve Nash. Like, even Steve Nash, though, shooting that layup. Like, I love the search dribble. I love it. I think it's great. But dude, what's Dallin Hall? 6'4"?
Yeah, he's big.
Very strong. He's athletic. You can make those layups. That killed us. Like, that goes to your free throw point. We can't have a point guard who can actually get to the basket and not shoot the ball. Like, when we are shooting 33s a game, we have to have somebody that's willing to shoot layups. And Dallin's played great. I'm not saying he hasn't. But this comes down to him, I think. Because if he's shooting layups, even if we miss it, we have Khalifa, who had an incredible game, by the way.
Monster game.
Like, he can get an offensive rebound. Foose can get an offensive rebound. But there's nothing to rebound if you're turning the ball over out of bounds.
It was really odd. I know it's the same thing. It's almost like it was part of Texas Tech's game plan to let Dallin Hall get to his right hand to the hoop. And maybe good to them. They saw something on film, or maybe he doesn't like to lay it in there. I'm not sure. But yeah, there was multiple times. I think 3 times he dribbled it out of bounds. And then, there were multiple times where he just wouldn't put the shot up. And I think, going back to the free throw point, like, those are the shots you have to take and draw contact, give them a pump fake, right? Bump into their chest, whatever it is, they're going to hit your arm and get a couple free throws. And so that was odd. That's interesting that you noticed that, because I saw the same thing.
Yeah.
We were just jacking up in the second half of the Texas Tech game. We were just jacking up 3 after 3 after 3. We started the half 0 for 8. And it just seems like, I don't know if it's because we're up by a lot or it's the second half and guys get tired, but we were just settling for contested 3-pointers when I thought we could have done a little more work to get the ball inside. I thought Foose had a decent game. Didn't show a ton on the stat sheet, but he did seem to have some of his footwork back. He backed in that big guy. He loves to get to that right hand, that little baby hook over his left shoulder. And he got to that shot multiple times. And so I thought it was good to see him back in form. But yeah, we're not going to win a lot of games shooting 5 free throws overall. We got to get more foul calls.
Houston tomorrow. The last time the BYU Cougars played the Houston Cougars, TJ Haws hit a game winner on the right wing, little bouncing on the rim. They won 72-71. The BYU Cougars did. Hoping for something similar tomorrow night. Speaking of the Cougars, though, I know you have something prepared on your Mascot Minute.
It's time for Mascot Minute. Everybody loves it. I love live mascots. And guess what? I'm very jealous to find out that Houston has a live cougar.
No, they don't.
Has had multiple live cougars.
That makes me sick.
Now, this is something I would really, really want to BYU, but though they just it's like in a zoo, right? So they go to the zoo, they're like, you guys have a cougar. Can we name it after our university? It's Shasta, right? Yeah. That's what they call it, Shasta. So it's like cool, but yeah, they definitely need to be running that out in front of the team, especially for football games. But anyway, they're on Shasta. It looks like Shasta 7. They've had, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Shastas. Dates all the way back to the 40s. Originally, the reason they became Cougars, so we have the Washington State Cougars, the BYU Cougars, and the Houston Cougars, which is kind of lame that we're all copying each other.
Yep.
But back in 1927, a guy called John R. Bender, a former head football coach of the Washington State Cougars, came to Houston, and he loved the Cougars being at Washington State, and decided it was going to be the name of his new team, so the university adopted it.
Is that loud? Just like, man, I miss my old school so much.
The 20s were different. The 20s were different.
That's when we had the Cincinnati Bearcat, right? Like that's when they did their whole thing with that.
That's exactly right. Yeah, these teams, yeah. Anyway, so they're red, we're blue. Washington State's also red. I did see a thing one time. It was like, who do you associate the Cougars with?
Yeah.
It was like, do you associate it with Washington State? And it was like a map, right?
Yeah.
And the Northwest was Washington State. That makes sense. And then Texas was like, the Houston Cougars. But then like the rest of the whole country was all blue for BYU.
That's
so
pretty sweet.
I do think we're leading out on the Cougars name.
We are a national brand. For those wondering, the life expectancy, because you said it started in the 40s when they had their
got
first
a live
Cougar.
mascot, yeah.
They've only gone through 7, which is impressive because the life expectancy is anywhere from 8 to 13 years. So like they're taking care of these Cougars, which is pretty unique.
Long live the Cougars.
Yeah. As far as the game goes tomorrow, final predictions.
Houston leads the nation in scoring margin, scoring defense, field goal defense, KenPom adjusted defense, KenPom effective field goal percentage defense, 2-point field goal percentage defense, defensive block shot percentage, defensive steal percentage, and turnover margin. Very good team. BYU leads the nation in a number of categories as well. BYU's 10th in the KenPom this week, 5th in the net. We've been top 5 in the net since the rankings came out on December 3rd. So consistently, we've been very good. We've been ranked 9 weeks in a row, as I mentioned. BYU is the only Division I men's basketball team in the top 20 of these categories: adjusted offense, adjusted defense, effective field goal percentage, and effective field goal percentage defense. Very balanced team, offense and defense. I'm going to say, I don't know what the line is. I don't know if it's dropped yet.
There's no line. I was actually hoping you'd bring that up. If I gave you the Houston Cougars minus 8.5. I feel like that's a fun line.
8.5. Is the ESPN BPI out, the percentage?
It is 69%.
Okay. I was going to say 75.
Yeah,
okay.
You're right.
Yeah. I think I'd take the Cougars.
Which ones?
The boys in blue.
Really?
At 8.5, I think
plus
so.
8.5. I like that.
If it's like 5 or 6, but I think 8.5, I'll take BYU.
Can I give you an adjusted line of the BYU Cougars minus 2.5? Would you take that? $1 wins you 5. 25 wins you 125.
And BYU has to win by 2? 2.5?
3 or more.
Yeah, I'd take that.
I like that. If BYU is going to win, I feel like it's going to be more than
well, and the fact that we have them at home.
Yeah.
Right. We can beat good teams at home.
I'm actually really curious what this line is going to be, because if it came out as like Houston minus 3.5, I wouldn't be super shocked. Like, I know that sounds low, but BYU at home is good.
Well, and we talked a couple weeks ago, the Marriott Center home court's got to be 4.5, 5 points.
At least.
I think it's one of the best
like,
in the country.
We were favored against San Diego State, and I keep going back to that. But it's like no one knew who BYU was, and we knew San Diego State was a Final Four team. So it's like, and we were favored. So, like, obviously they like the Marriott Center.
Yeah, it's a great place to play. Like I said, we get out to a hot start. The crowd really gets into it. I think that we could do big things. And I don't know, Houston's played big games in the past. I don't know about this year if they played in a venue like the Marriott Center, one of the biggest college basketball arenas in the country. Like I said, a lot of fans going to be there. It could be pretty raucous, and maybe we can rattle them early. That'd be fun.
BYU plays Houston tomorrow night at 7 p.m. That game's going to be on ESPN Plus. If you haven't subscribed yet, you have to, because that's where most of the games are.
Can I just say I'm really confused by this?
Yeah.
Like, it feels like I got ESPN Plus, obviously, so I can watch the games. Like $12, not a big deal. But it just feels like we had more games on like actual TV in the West Coast Conference than we do now.
Way more.
Like, this is the number 21 team against the number 3 team. A couple of college sports writers gave it the game of the week.
Yeah.
And we're still on streaming. Like, I'm just confused.
It doesn't make sense.
How does this not make ESPN? Is ESPN Tuesday night NBA? Maybe
ESPN is Tuesday night. No, that's TNT.
TNT's Tuesday night.
TNT Tuesdays.
So, like, why can this? It's a ranked matchup, the best game of the week. 2 teams that are vying for, a better seed in the tournament, a shot at the Big 12 title. Like, why is this on TV? I'm very confused by this. Now, I'm not going to complain. Every single game is on TV, quote unquote. You can watch it on ESPN Plus, which is great. But it's just odd to me that we can't get on at least like ESPNU. Like, what's on ESPNU on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock?
So I'm looking. Texas and Oklahoma play at 5 o'clock on ESPN on Tuesday.
That's a good rivalry game.
But there's no 7 p.m. College basketball game unless it's a women's game, and I'm not seeing it on here.
That's so odd to me. Like, what game is better than this at 7 o'clock on ESPN?
I don't. And
we can't even get ESPN 2. Like,
no, there's no NBA games on Tuesday night.
I saw a stat that we have the most games on ESPN Plus this year. Again, it's fine, right? I'll pay $12 for 3 months to watch the games. It's just a little odd to me that we're not making more games on ESPN.
One game we haven't touched on. BYU is at home against Texas, the Longhorns. That's
Saturday.
at noon, and that is on ESPN too. So if you do have a cable service or something like that, you'll be able to catch that game.
That game's already sold out as well.
Really? Well, at noon on a Saturday. Hopefully, that's
and it's
the
Texas.
perfect,
That's fun. Okay, I got one more thing though.
Yeah.
100% of national championships since 2002. So we're going on 21 years. Have been both top 40 KenPom and top 22 in the defense. KenPom defense.
Okay.
So there are now 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 9 teams left that are like this.
That's
We've
it.
done a couple of these stats throughout the year, and it seems like BYU is landing in these quite a bit. Houston, who we play tomorrow, Tennessee, Carolina, Arizona, Auburn, Marquette, Purdue, BYU, Michigan State. So 9 teams, BYU, one of the 9 that apparently still have a shot at the Natty.
Not apparently. I'm taking the BYU Final Four plus 1,200 right now, 12-1. I love it.
It's had to have slid. Come on.
It has. I mean, that was during the game last week when we were up 30 or up 20. That's it. We're going to be back on here on Tuesday next week, I believe.
Early next week, yeah.
Which we'll have the Houston recap, the Texas recap. Who do we play that night?
Should be a fun week, though.
Yeah.
2 really it's not often that BYU plays, in the past at least, plays 2 ranked teams in the same week. This doesn't happen very often, so it's pretty cool.
Texas is not ranked this week.
Oh, you're right.
Did you see that? They fell out, which is fine. They're 19-5.
But we did play 2 ranked teams last week. So we played Iowa State and Texas Tech, who was ranked. So 3 ranked teams in a row.
Yeah.
And Texas Tech is right on the bubble. I think they're like 27th or 28th when you look at the votes. So.
Yep. This has been it for the STLK and the UTA Cougars podcast. We'll catch you next week.